the Coalition is considering a new citizenship-style test for visa holders as part of its new immigration policy. See, unless you are applying for citizenship, prospective migrants currently don't need to sit a test on Australian values. Instead, they're required to read and sign an Australian values statement, which any old fool could do. So effectively, you could live most of your life here as a migrant and never have to prove that you understand the country. But the Coalition's Home Affairs spokesman, John O'Daniel, he told the Sunday Telegraph today that they're considering support for conditions on visas to ensure migrants connect to the Australian way of life. He's also suggested strengthening English language requirements for foreign students, which I think is pretty sensible. Sussan Ley spoke to Andrew Clennell this morning, but she was tight-lipped on the details of the policy.
You won't have to wait too long, Andrew, it's December tomorrow, before we talk about the principles that I will enunciate. And they will include a variety of things. And we will develop further what those look like over time, because we need the data from the government in the categories of visas so that we can actually put forward a coherent policy based on that.
Now let me do my best Sussan Ley impersonation. Tight-lipped is what I'm doing. Look, it's good.
I'm glad you explained that.
I think everyone's very relieved that was...
Well, look, I mean, I know it is TV, but there may be some blind viewers at home. So I'm just letting them know, because, you know, we've got to be inclusive.
Marcel Marceau did not explain his mind.
You've got to explain the joke, Caleb. It's not a joke.
We're inclusive.
That's right.
Sunday
3 words.
But look, I think they're generally moving in the right direction here, Holly. I like the idea of a test for visas. I like the idea of being stricter about English language requirements. But I think what it really needs is a number. They need to come up with a number of this is the amount of people, number of people that we let into the country. Now, I know this government has completely disregarded the numbers that they come up with.
Willy-nilly numbers.
But they need to say, this is what we want to get migration down to.
Look, and I think what they're trying to do in the policy work in the background, and John O'Daniel's been speaking about this, is actually having a look, what can our hospitals sustain, what can our schools sustain, what can the road network sustain, and what the housing situation's going to be. So rather than just picking an arbitrary number out of the air, I think that work does need to be done, because that's where we're seeing a lot of this impacts from bigger migration numbers having an impact on the everyday Australians' way of life, whether it be through housing or increased pressure on cost of living. But the fact they want to put an English test onto students, I think is, I mean, how is this not happening? We teach in our universities in English. If you can't speak it, how are you going to university and learning anything there? That just seems to me a no-brainer.
It's theoretically there's a test now. It's just a very bad test. It's not good enough. Years ago, my father was the manager of what used to be called in those days the Everleigh Locomotive Workshops. He used to say, anyone who can't understand me can't work here. It was a dangerous place with blast furnaces. So it's really important. And the student thing is vital, because what happens now, it's the Aussie who suffers. They do these group assignments and the Aussie with good English does all the work, and the people who are struggling with English can't do any research, they can't contribute to it, and so he carries them.
But how do they pass a degree? If they can't speak the language, the degree's being supported.
Money speaks.
I mean, honestly.
By doing these cooperative assignments where other people do most of the work who can speak English and carry them through. And because, as Evelyn says, because they're paying a fee, there's a lot of pressure to give them the mark and pass them through the degree. Exactly.
And I think it's very fair to say that those other students who are carrying them through might want a little bit of compensation for the fact that they have done that. But Evelyn, does this go far enough? Obviously, it's still in the developer stage. So look, we don't have the full detail, and we can pore over it when we do get the actual policy. But on the basis of what you've heard so far, what do you make of it?
I definitely think it's encouraging that the opposition is actually being an opposition and they're actually offering something different. When I saw Sussan Ley talking about this, I was like, finally, somebody's actually talking about what everyday Australians are wanting our elected politicians to talk about. What Sussan Ley and the Liberal Party do from here is vitally important, because if they don't go far enough, people are going to go, they're Labor light again. So this is Sussan's, like, a real opportunity she has here to show that the Liberal Party have some backbone, that the Liberal Party can actually get something done and they can listen to the people. Because I don't think it's far enough. I think the first thing that the Liberal Party should do is perhaps define what it means to be Australian and what Australian values are, because that's up in the air at the moment. One of the biggest topics of debate right now, if you go on any social media, is what does it mean to be an Australian? It's almost like, what does it mean to be a woman? Nobody can define it anymore. So I think if she comes out strong, she defines what it means to be an Australian, she stands firm in that, and she offers a real opposition to the Labor Party, I think it could be really good. And I think it's good that they're having this conversation.
Practical tests. Years ago, Auntie Jack had this wonderful test where on one table was a salami, on another was a vanilla slice. If you went for the vanilla slice, you're Australian.
And then you have your arm broken if you make the wrong decision. Does Labor think that migration is an issue, Joe?
Yeah, it definitely does. But again, it's a complex issue, and that's the problem, because, you know, a lot of the things that people are talking about are not just caused by migration, but also are why we need migrants to fix those problems. If you talk about the hospital system, we've got a shortage of health workers, and that's why we need.
Are you saying the
people from
government
overseas.
created the problem, and now the government are bringing people in to
the government
fix
hasn't created the problem. No, this is just how, you know, nations work. This is how they are built. They are built from bringing people in to fill the jobs that we need to give us the way of life that we've come to expect.
If that was happening, I think people would be happy with migration numbers, but I don't think people are thinking
that way.
We're getting the electricians or the plumbers. We're certainly getting the Uber drivers, and I think that's the problem.
But aged care workers and doctors.
But no, they are what we need, but I don't think we're getting that targeted skilled migration, and that's why people are upset, because they're seeing these huge numbers blowing out. And particularly around foreign
because people are just seeing this giant headline number. And again, we've got to get it right. And it's all about finding a balancing act. If you talk about, for example, you know, someone needing to pass an Australian values test like the citizenship, well, do you apply that just to permanent residents? I think that could be a pretty sensible move, because of course we live next door to them as we do to citizens. But you also apply to temporary workers who are being brought in to.
Why would you invite anyone in your home who doesn't share your values?
So
every family.
every tourist visa we hand out?
100%. I don't want anyone coming to the country that doesn't have Australian values. Seriously, why would you want someone in your home
every single prospective
your laws or your way of
visitor
life?
to Australia should pass a citizenship test.
They should not be a danger to Australian citizens, and they should respect our Australian values for them to come in. Just like if I was to go to Saudi Arabia, I'm not going to walk down the main street in a bikini showing my tits. I would respect the country.
And you know what? Those Saudi Arabian men are very disappointed to hear that.
And of course, that's why we have the...
It's called respect.
That's why we have the character test, or the minister has available to him the character test. So he can cancel a visa if he believes that the individual is not a good character. I guess the question is, and Joe raises it, you know, we need to fill a lot of positions, and that is true. But there is another way other than migration to fill these positions, and that is to have kids.